Hey guys, Simisdim here, finally back with another review, and this time something a little bit different. I've done a bunch of ARs, so I thought why not review an AK. This specific AK, as the title suggests, is the E&L AK 102. I just want to quickly thank my sponsor, Maddog Airsoft, for making this happen. Now we're going to go over the following things with the AK 102. We're going to go over what you get in the box, my initial impressions, a range test, a chrono test, and my rating out of 10. So without further ado, let's jump into the review. Let's just briefly go over the AK 102 in the real steel world. The AK 102 was one of the AKs that was designed in the mid-90s. Its characteristics are it has a solid stock which can fold, it has a shorter barrel, it also, unlike other AKs, it fires the 5.56 by 45 NATO round, so it uses the same rounds as the G36 and the M4 to name a few. The AK-102 hasn't seen very widespread use. I wasn't even aware that there was this type of AK until I played the game Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, as it's Snake's first weapon that he decides to pick up. I do find it's quite an interesting hybrid, as it has all the same functionality as an AK, but obviously it fires a NATO round. That's just a brief history of the AK-102 and a few references. Let's get into what you get in the box in this E&L offering. So here's an image of what you get in the box. There are two things missing, but I will include what they are. So you get the gun itself, you get a mid-cap magazine, which is nice that companies are starting to include a mid-cap instead of a high-cap. You get the manual, you get a quality control certificate with the first 5 shots fired, and they've written it down in joules instead of FPS, so that's quite nice. The other two things, annoyingly, I didn't take out of the box that you get an AK style cleaning kit and you get a bottle of oil. The interesting thing about E&L AKs is they're actually made in a Chinese AK factory, so the bodies are off real AKs, which is a really nice touch. Moving on, let's talk about my initial impressions of the AK. After taking it out of the box and holding it for the first time, it felt really solid. The furniture felt great, the stock was solid, the pistol grip was solid, and the actual overall body of the gun felt great. It felt really well made. The only thing I didn't like was the magazine. It just seemed to not feed properly the first couple of times. It would insert and you would hear the BBs going into the hop chamber, but it just wouldn't feed. I don't think that's a fault of the gun. I do think it's a fault of the magazine, potentially sitting in the box or something like that. But it seemed to run after we put a few 100 rounds through it, so it seemed totally fine. Just quickly moving back to the pistol grip portion of the gun. One thing I didn't really like on my initial impression of it, although it felt solid, it has this kind of raised checkering with a border, and it just sticks out a little bit too much. Especially if you're not wearing gloves, you can really feel it, but not in a good way. Yes, it will keep your grip, but it just sticks out too much and makes the grip feel unnecessarily wide. But enough about that, let's jump into some of the features of the weapon. I'm just going to go over a few things that I've noticed and I think are quite good about it. Now the first thing is the fact that it has a decent solid stock, and also this solid stock can be folded. This means that if you need to get into a tight spot with the AK, you can fold the stock easily and then be able to get into that tight spot and potentially maneuver quicker. Then another feature that I liked, which is taken off the AK-74 series of rifles, is the fact that it has the side mount from the AK-74 platform. This allows you to easily slide on a rail adapter or a PSO clone scope, which is nice, and it gives you that little bit extra modularity which a lot of AKs don't offer easily. And finally, it's the furniture of the AK that I really like. I'm not a big fan of the wooden furniture of AKs. Don't ask me why, it's just a personal preference. I really like the polymer furniture on this. It gives it that more updated AK look. Although I'm not a big fan of the wood furniture, I'm also not a big fan of AKs covered in rails, so this polymer furniture is a nice middle ground, I believe. Now let's move on to the chrono test. In this test we're using 0.20 gram non-bio BBs with a 7.4 non-LiPo battery.
Yep, go.
Do
0.2 gram BBs.
And there we have it. After a total of 10 shots, the total variance FPS wise is 12 feet per second, which is pretty decent considering we didn't touch the hop and we hadn't put very many shots through it at this point. So we move on to the range test now. I'm using 0.20 gram BBs again. There is a left to right crosswind and I'm shooting from two distances. The first distance is between 15 and 20 meters and the second distance is around 30 to 35. That's every shot now. What I mean by that's every shot now, while I was shooting, is there did seem to be a little bit of a problem with the hop. Bear in mind, like the Chrono Test, we did the Chrono Test and then the range test. We hadn't actually played with the hop at all, and we hadn't put that many rounds through it. So this was almost as out of box as you can get, and I don't think the hop had been worn in. Interestingly enough, as you saw there, when I switched it to full auto, it seemed to fire a lot better. The shots at the further range were starting to dip every other shot, but as soon as I flicked it to full auto, it seemed to solve the problem, so I think it was just a hop issue, and it not being worn in. But that segues into the next part, and the final part of the video, so I'm going to give you my final thoughts quickly, and then I'll give you my P rating out of 10. Because I know that's why everyone's here, right? For my P rating. Overall, I thought it was a great gun. It was definitely a solid build, however, the hop left a little bit to be desired, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of AK hops. It doesn't mean they're bad, I'm just not used to them, and I'm not a big fan of the slider system. I much prefer a rotary hop of, say, any of the AR style hop-up units you can get. So let's sum it up with a few pros and a few cons, and we'll start with the pros. So the first pro is the build quality is phenomenal. It's what you expect from an E&L gun, so that is my first pro. The second pro is modularity. Now what I mean is obviously the side mount from the AK-74 style rifles means that you can add a top rail without having to change out the top dust cover, or you can put replica scopes on. So that is also a good pro. You can also change out the front furniture to include rails if you would wish. My third pro is also the price. It's a sub £250 gun. If you want a good quality AK that is going to last you, this is the one for you. However, in everything there are also cons, and let's go over the cons. So my first con is unfortunately the hop chamber. Like I mentioned earlier, it's more of a personal preference thing. I'm not a big fan of the AK slider hop units, so that is the first con for me. Secondly, as also mentioned previously, I'm really not a fan of the pistol grip. Like I said, the checkering is raised with a border around it and it makes it quite abrasive. Yeah, it's good for grip, but it doesn't feel comfortable. And my final con is the battery space. This is one of those AKs where you take the dust cover off and you have to put the battery there. However, you can put a long stick type battery, pretty much all the way to the gas tube. It's good if you have those specific batteries, but if like me you just have a bunch of LiPos that none of them will fit, it means you have to go and splash out on new batteries. So that is the final con. But let's get down to it, let's go and give it my P rating. So I give the E&L AK 102 a P rating of 7 out of 10. And the reason it's a 7 out of 10 is because the build quality is phenomenal, it's a great looking gun, it's not going to let you down, however I'm just not a fan of a few of the features of it. So that is it guys, let me know what you think. Let me know if you're happy to see me doing more reviews, and stay tuned for what I have for you in 2020. This is Simisdim, and I'll see you next time.